Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Tyranids. We're going to be doing a list build video today, 1000 point list. Now we're still in 9th edition, we're still using the Arcs of Omen detachment. I know 10th edition is not far away now, but there's still a couple of months, maybe even 3 months while we're still in 9th edition. So I thought I'd throw out a list, and then when 10th edition comes, of course, we will be making another one. So this is going to be a Tyranid list, 1000 points, so it's going to be an incursion mission using the Arcs of Omen detachment. Now just bear in mind when you are playing at incursion level, 1000 points level, there are restrictions on how many datasheets you can use within an actual list. You can only use a maximum of 2 of each datasheet in the list. So for example, you can't be using 3 Tyrannofexes in a 1000 point list, you are restricted to 2. Now the only rule against this restriction is if it's a troop option or a dedicated transport option, then you can use as many as you can see fit. But everything else, you are restricted to 2. So bear that in mind when you are making a Tyranids list at 1000 points. A lot of people do get caught out by that, and it does make list building quite tricky at 1k. So let's start with the list. So guys, just before getting into this list build, just a quick shout out to Rift, who is in our Discord. They've helped me out with this list, so I just want to shout you out before we get into it. So the Hive Fleet that we're going to be using is the Behemoth Hive Fleet. This is going to give a +1 to our strength on the charge or heroic interventions, and our adaptive is going to be the re-rollable charge rolls. Now we could optionally have changed the adaptive, but I think re-rolling a charge roll is quite good on a melee based army. So for the Warlord and the first HQ within this list, we're going with a Hive Tyrant. It's 180 points at base cost, and this is what we're going to be equipping on our Hive Tyrant. So there's going to be 2 monstrous scything talons, and you're going to get +2 attack because you're going to be making an additional attack with each monstrous scything talon. So that will in fact bring his attacks to 7. Then we're going to also equip the heavy venom cannon. Now this will cost us 15 points. So now our points tally will go from 180 to 195 as shown in the image here. Now these are 36 range, heavy 3, strength 9, -3 AP and 4 damage. So quite a decent weapon, and yeah. In fact, we're going to go further than that. We're going to be upgrading that weapon with one of the bio artifacts, otherwise known as a relic in the generic game. Now we're going to be using the core stratagem for 1 CP to give our army one of these relics, and we're going to be using the shard gullet. So this will exchange your heavy venom cannon for the shard gullet, which is 36 inch range again. It's also heavy 3, but this time it is strength 12, -5 AP, and the damage is a flat 5. So 15 points and a command point on top of that. That's what we're getting with our Hive Tyrant. Now we're also going to be taking a Warlord trait for another command point using another core stratagem before the game even begins. And it's going to be the Adaptive Biology Warlord trait, which is effectively a 5+ feel no pain save against all wounds. So every single wound that is lost, you get to roll a dice, and any 5+ rolls, that wound is ignored. Right, so for the powers, of course, we get Smite. We're also going to be getting the Unstoppable Onslaught Psychic power, which comes for free if you are going with the Behemoth Hive Fleet. You're going to get a +1 to their wound rolls in melee. So that comes for free because we are playing that Hive Fleet. Now the 2 that I've actually selected, the first one is the Neuro Parasite, and the second option I've gone with today is the Onslaught power, which they don't suffer any penalties for their hit rolls when firing assault weapons while they're advancing, and also models in the unit do not suffer penalties to hit rolls when firing heavy weapons, and also on top of that they're eligible to declare a charge when they advance. So that's the part I mainly want to be using for that power. The advance and then charge route I think is a massive thing in the 40k game. Now we did have the option of the adrenal glands, but we don't need them because the Behemoth Hive Fleet is a +1 to our strength, and we are starting at strength 7. So with this Hive Fleet we are getting to that magic number of strength 8, which wounds most things on a 3+, if not a 2+. Now I'm not going to bother with the toxin sacks. I don't think there's enough attacks to warrant taking the toxin sacks. Now of course he's got Synapse, he's got Sharing the Warp, he's got Will of the Hive Mind, so a core unit within Synaptic link range in your command phase is going to get to reroll hit rolls of a 1. He's got the 4+ invulnerable save and the death throws ability as well. So that's the first HQ within our list. The second one is going to be the Neurothrope, 110 points at base cost. Now his psychic powers, again we've got Smite and Unstoppable Onslaught because of the Hive Fleet, but I've also gone with Catalyst to be able to cast that 5+ feel no pain save on our models, and I've also gone with Psychic Scream. It's very similar to having the Smite attack. Closest enemy unit within 18 inches of this Psyker suffers D3 mortal wounds, and if they are a Psyker, then extra things happen to it. But to be honest with you, I'm not likely going to be using either of these 2 psychic powers because there's going to be a different gameplay for the Neurothrope with the secondary objectives. We'll get onto that in the tactics section of this video. But yeah, Neurothropes are quite tanky in general. They've got the 3+ invulnerable save, which is very rare in the game at present. They've also got the Spirit Leech ability. So in the psychic phase, each time an enemy unit within 18 inches of this model suffers a mortal wound, I'm going to be selecting my Neurothrope to regain 1 lost wound to a maximum of 3 per phase. He's also got the Psychic Node to add 1 to the Psychic tests, and the Warp Siphon ability in the command phase. Select a friendly Psychic unit within Synaptic link range that has not already been selected for this ability, and you're going to add an additional d6 when taking Psychic tests and discarding one of the dice. So once you combine all that together, he's very rarely going to be failing Psychic tests. He's going to be doing some Psychic actions anyway, but this could be helpful for other Psychic units. Right, let's move on to the next battlefield role, which is the troops option. I've got a minimum unit of Tyranid warriors, so you've got 3 in a unit there, and they are costing us 90 points at base cost. Now we're going to be taking the bone swords with lash whips. That's going to be 5 points per model, so 15 in total, so that brings their tally to 105 points for the unit. Now the bone swords are strength 7 minus 2 AP, 2 damage, you're re-rolling once because of the lash whips, and the strength 7 will go to strength 8 on the charge. Again, that magic number of strength 8 is very helpful in the game at present. They've also got the 3 Devourers, which are 8 in its range, assault 5, strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. These are mainly used against light infantry, not the biggest of ranges, so maybe they're going to be in the no man's land. That's probably where they'll be most effective within this list. Now again, we don't need the adrenal glands, we're already getting to strength 8 with the Behemoth High Fleet. Toxin sacks are probably not worth it on a 3-man unit either. Now they've got Synapse, which is going to be quite helpful, and Shadows in the Warp again. Onto another battlefield role, we've gone with 2 units of 5 Gene Stealers. 80 points a unit, so that's 160 points for the 2 units of Gene Stealers there. They come in with the Claws and Talons, strength 4, minus 3 AP, 1 damage. Fairly standard, but they've got quite a lot of attacks. So 1 model in each unit is going to be taking the Acid Maw to get the Acid Maw keyword, which relates to the stratagems. And 1 model in the unit will also take the Flesh Hooks keyword. So when they're making normal move, advanced move or falling back moves, they don't count the vertical distances when they're moving. There's also a stratagem relating to the flesh hooks as well for a +1 to their hit rolls in melee. Now these are going to have a natural 5+ invulnerable save, which is pretty good, and a 4+ invulnerable save in fact in melee. Makes them very survivable. The best part about them is the fact that they've got the Vanguard Predator ability, so they can effectively be set up on the battlefield anywhere more than 9 inches away from enemy deployment zones and enemy models. So you can set them up in the no man's land right from turn 1, and that's going to prevent your opponent from doing those same things if you get to do it first, that is. As an example, infiltrators, maybe your opponent's going to set those up before you do. Maybe it's an Invictus Warsuit. There's lots of units in the game that can be set up outside of a deployment zone, and the Gene Stealers are one of them. This in fact also helps for things such as raise the banners and just screening off our area in general. Sticking with the elites, I've gone with 1 single Lictor for 70 points. Again, he's got the Claws and Talons, although these are strength 7 minus 3 AP and 2 damage, so a little bit more vicious in combat. And he also comes standard with the Flesh Hook, which we've mentioned earlier in the video. Now he's got the Chameleonic Skin, so it's a -1 to hit him, and if he's in cover, cannot be selected as a target of a ranged attack. If the attacker is more than 12 inches away, pretty nice, and he's got a 5+ invulnerable save as standard. Now the Inhuman Swiftness he's got is an ability to make enemy units fight last in a fight phase if they're within engagement range of him, and the Hidden Hunter ability effectively is the Deep Strike ability, but it's a little bit different in fact. So in the reinforcement step, you can set this model up wholly within 6 inches of any battlefield edge or any terrain features, and that will include hills, as long as you're more than 9 inches away from enemy models, and it can be 6 inches if it's wholly within your own deployment zone. You also get a reroll to your charge roll when you're entering the battlefield in this manner. Going into the fast attack, we've got a character model, the Parasite of Mortrex, 70 points. He comes with the Clawed Limbs, strength 5 minus 2 AP, 1 damage, yep, not too bad. And the Barbed Ovipositor, which is strength 6 minus 1 AP, 1 damage. It's only 1 attack, but it has that Parasite's ability, which I really do like. In fact, speaking of the Parasite ability, called Parasite Infection in fact. If you successfully wound an enemy unit, excluding vehicles, then they're going to suffer 1 additional mortal wound to the damage, and then they become infected with parasites. So at the start of your opponent's command phase, they're going to roll a d6. On a 1, 2 or 3, they suffer d3 mortal wounds, and they're no longer infected. A 4, 5 and 6, they still suffer d3 mortal wounds, but they remain infected, so in their next command phase they've got to do this all over again. Now if the unit suffers 2 or more mortal wounds as a result of this ability, you also get to set up a friendly Ripper Swarm unit on the battlefield within 3 inches of that unit, but not within engagement range. That Ripper Swarm unit is going to contain 1 model, and it's not going to cost you any reinforcement points, so an additional model there that can score you points, or just distract your opponent. Now, in fact, the Parasite ability goes on even further, because if they are infected with the parasites, they lose objective secured on top of that as well. So that could be really handy, especially against troop models that hold on to an objective. Removing OBSEC could be key. They've got the Shadow Hunter abilities. Enemy units are going to subtract 1 from the hit rolls, and they cannot be re-rolling those hit rolls. And you can also be doing the Deep Strike ability, Death from Above, and it also gives them a re-rollable charge roll on entry. Now I'm going to be spending an additional command point here with a Hive Predator stratagem, which is a requisition stratagem. This is effectively a way of getting an additional warlord trait within your list. I'm going to be giving the warlord trait Alien Cunning to our Parasite of Mortrex. This will give him objective secured. He's also going to count as 5 models when controlling an objective, and he can do an action while advancing or falling back. Now he's already pretty rapid, he's already moving 16 inches, so if you've got an advanced roll on top of that, and then you could still do an action and have an objective holding it as 5 models and obsec, that could be absolutely key. Right, let's move on to the heavies. I've gone with 2 Screamer Killers, but 260 points for the pair at base cost. They come with the Bioplasmic Scream, which is Assault D6, Strength 8, -4 AP, 1 damage. Not too bad of a weapon at all. But the main party trick that these guys have is their Screamer Killer Talons. They're Strength 6, -3 AP and 3 damage. Now they've got 10 attacks as standard. There's also an additional attack on the charge with the Blistering Assault ability. And with the Behemoth Hive Fleet, they're going to go to Strength 7. Now in fact, stop right there because we're going to also add the Adrenal Glands for 10 points a model, bringing our total to 280 points. This is going to add 1 to their movement as well as their strength. So in fact, these Talons will be Strength 8, -3 AP, 3 damage. These guys are an absolute nightmare. They've got Toughness 7, a 2+ armor save, -1 to all damage with their Armored Eco Skeleton. They've got the Terrifying ability, so if you do destroy a model, then you're going to subtract 1 from the leadership of the models in that unit to a maximum of 4. So if you get to destroy 4 models, that's going to be -4 to their leadership. Then there'll be 4 more because of course you've destroyed 4 models. Very likely going to be failing leadership there. 1 extra model will then run, and then any 1s or possibly any 1s or 2s, they're going to be losing even more models. Right, so that is the list. Let's get into the actual tactics. Let's start off with the Synaptic Imperative abilities. Let's order a few here because we've got 4 in total for our army. Turn 1, I'm going to be using the Neurothropes ability, Psychic Augmentation. So add 1 to the Psychic test, add 1 to the Deny the Witch test, and a 5+ Feel No Pain save against mortal wounds. The likelihood is we're all going to be clumped up in our own deployment zone, so everything's going to be within 6 inches of a Synapse creature or model. So therefore, army-wide, we're going to have this ability on with everyone. Turn 2, I'm going to use the Tyranid Warriors, which is the Goaded to Slaughter ability for the Exploding 6s in melee. At that stage, I would hope to have got into melee, maybe even turn 1, it depends on who goes first and how far the deployment zones are, I guess. But we'll be using that in turn 2 just to ensure that we get to use it. Turn 3, Parasite of Mortrex with a Swift Onslaught. Effectively, it's an additional 3 inch to your Piling and Consolidation moves. At that stage, we should likely be finishing off models in melee, so those consolidation moves will be handy, and if we haven't, then those piling moves will also be handy. And in turn 4, if our Hive Tyrant is still up and running, the Relentless Ferocity to be able to declare a charge even if you've fallen back. So we've got 4 turns where we've got the Synaptic Imperative ability. Right, so that's the Synaptic Imperatives all dealt with. Next we're going to look at some secondary objectives that we can use within this list. Now the first one, I definitely want to be selecting one of the Warcraft options for the Neurothrope to deal with. We've got 2 to play with here. The first one, Psychic Interrogation. That's a psychic ability, or psychic action rather, and you're going to be using it on a psychic character against another visible character that your opponent has that's within 24 inches. Then furthermore, in addition, if the result of your psychic test is equal or greater than the leadership characteristics of that enemy character, then you gain a command point as well. I think that's the one that I probably would take, but there is the other option of the Warp Ritual. All you've got to do is get to the centre of the battlefield, be within 6 inches of the centre, a psychic action for your psychic character, again your Neurothrope. Now that one unfortunately will be capped at 12 victory points for the entire game. You've only got to do it 3 times though. Once you do it 3 times, doesn't have to do it any more times, so he could be used for things such as smite attacks, or even using that catalyst save for other friendlies within your list. So there's only 3 turns where your Neurothrope is tied down to doing the action. Whereas with the Psychic Interrogation, in order to maximum score it, you will need to do it all 5 turns. And even if you want just 12 points from your Psychic Interrogation, you're still going to be tied down for 4 turns, provided that he's alive for 4 turns. But it's a toss-up between both of those. Kind of depends if you think you're going to be able to get the centre of the battlefield without a problem, then yeah, Warp Ritual is probably a decent shout. But if you're still unsure, I'd go with Psychic Interrogation. So that's the first one. The second one, I think I'm looking at Engage on all fronts. We've got the 2 Screamer Killers, we've got the Hive Tyrant, we've got all the Gene Stealers, and of course our backline such as the Tyranid Warriors. So I think we can engage on all fronts. Now unfortunately we do need a qualifying unit to do the Engage on all fronts. Now if you've got 3 or more models at starting strength, then they will be eligible. So in fact the Neurothrope won't be eligible. The Tyranid Warriors just about will, they've got 3, and the Gene Stealers as well. Now the Screamer Killers are monsters, so they will in fact count. But as soon as our army starts getting whittled down, then this could potentially be a problem late game. Now the other option was behind enemy lines. I think it has the same situation here. If you start to lose models, getting behind enemy lines could be quite tricky. I think I'd rather engage on all fronts. With engage on all fronts, you get to score 2 victory points for having 3 table quarters, and then you're going to be scoring 3 victory points if you've got all 4. Then the final one I want to select is raise the banners high. I quite like raise the banners high. We've got a lot of infantry models in this list. We've got the couple of Genestealer units here. The Lictor as well, don't forget, he can also do the raise the banners because he's an infantry model. And again, that Neurothrope, if he's not doing the psychic interrogation all game long, he could also be doing raise the banners as well. In fact, we've also forgotten the Parasite Mortrex. That's actually an infantry character that can be doing this too, because it's fast infantry. That could be actually quite useful for those objectives that are a little bit further afield. So with this one, you just put in a banner up, and if you can control that banner into your command phase, you're going to be scoring 1 victory point per banner. Now what's great about raise the banners is you can do it multiple times in a single turn. So if you control 3 or even 4 objectives perhaps, right from turn 1, you could put 4 banners up, and if they stay up within your entirety of your turn, then your opponent's turn, and then it gets back to your command phase and they're still up, that's 4 victory points right there. So guys, that is my 1000 point Tyranids list using the Behemoth High Fleet. I almost said Dynasty there, I'm getting too used to Necrons. This is a Tyranid channel, so it's High Fleets and not Dynasties. But yeah, tell me what you think about my list. How would we improve it? Let me know of any weaknesses. I know there are some weaknesses. I want you to point them out to me in the comments down below. But yeah, other than that, all that is left to say is thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.